Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's wildfire update. As always, please ensure your cameras are off and your microphone remains on mute unless you're asking a question. We'll begin with remarks from Christie Tucker, Information Unit Manager for Alberta Wildfire, and Joe Zatylny, Deputy Managing Director for the Alberta Emergency Management Agency, and then we'll take your questions. Christie, go ahead.
Thank you. There are 118 wildfires burning in the forest protection area of Alberta. 19 of those are out of control, 48 are being held, and 50 are under control. Wildfire danger remains high to extreme in the southern parts of the province. We're seeing crossover conditions, which means that temperatures are higher than the relative humidity. In other words, it's hot and dry. Under those conditions, wildfires can start and spread quickly, and existing wildfires can show more extreme behavior, especially with some wind. We are able to respond to these conditions by pre-positioning firefighters, equipment, and aircraft in those areas that are experiencing higher wildfire danger. We did see some activity in the Rocky Mountain House Forest area yesterday on the Kiska complex south of Nordegg and north of Ram Falls Provincial Park. Smoke from an out-of-control wildfire in the complex led to the closure of the Forestry Trunk Road in that area, and some of the provincial parks may also be affected this weekend. For the latest information about road access, please remember to check 511. And for information about parks, visit albertaparks.ca. Please be aware that these conditions may lead to more smoke in the area of an active wildfire. In July, many of the new wildfires that started were caused by lightning. However, it's typical for us to see more human-caused wildfires start over a long weekend. This is when many Albertans head out to camp or recreate in our forests. Before you go, please check albertafirebans.ca to see if there are any restrictions or bans in place. If a campfire is allowed, make sure you have enough water on hand to extinguish it properly and never leave it unattended. There are showers in the forecast for Sunday and Monday, but until then, we need to be aware of the chance of starting a wildfire is higher. Help ensure our firefighters can focus on the current wildfire situation in the province. Do not be responsible for starting a wildfire this weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Christie. Joe, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. There haven't been any emergency alerts recently. Nonetheless, there are still several large wildfires of note, and the province and Provincial Emergency Coordination Center remains at an operational level 4 to coordinate the provincial government's emergency response. Today, residents of Chipewyan Lake in the Municipal District of Opportunity are returning home. And the Little Red River Cree Nation has announced all 3 communities on the First Nation will be able to return home on August 5th. This is welcome news. Evacuees have been away from home for many days now, and I'm sure everyone is eager to return to their daily routines in life. The First Nation is arranging for transportation for all those that need it. And at the same time, they're also restocking grocery stores and fuel supplies for the 7,000 residents returning home. We've posted information on alberta.ca/emergency to help guide people as they re-enter their community. That's alberta.ca/emergency. Specific re-entry instructions are also being provided by local authorities, and returning residents should take basic precautions and stay tuned to changing conditions. Returning home does not mean the wildfire season is over or the threat of wildfire is completely gone. Evacuation alerts and orders can happen at any time, and being prepared to leave on a short notice is critical. When it comes to re-entry, we ask all residents who remain evacuated to be patient and to not return home until their local authority lifts the order. We also ask those traveling back to drive safely and to check 511 for information on road conditions and closures. On that note, I also want to provide an update on the reopening of Highway 16. Parks Canada and Alberta 511 announced that Highway 16 through the National Park would be open to commercial and select traffic at select times throughout the day today. This is, of course, dependent on fire behavior and operational needs. Traffic is limited to trucks, tractors, or tractor trailers with a registered gross vehicle weight exceeding 11,794 kilograms. Commercial motorists will be escorted in both directions. Drivers need to ensure They have a reliable vehicle with a full tank of gas because no one will be allowed to stop as the park and town remain closed. Drivers are also encouraged to check Alberta 511 for updates. Highway 16 will remain closed overnight and at peak times during the day to make sure incident response staff are not hindered in their firefighting efforts. The RCMP is controlling access within the park at staff checkpoints on the highway in both directions, and drivers must stop and identify themselves at the checkpoints before proceeding. Plans are still in development to reunite Jasperites who are in Velmont with their families and friends here in Alberta. We are working with our partners in Jasper to share more details as they become available. The Unified Command continues to work on a comprehensive reentry plan. The municipality of Jasper has established specific reentry criteria to guide the next steps in the process, including the restoration of critical services and the remediation of various safety concerns necessary for safe return. Alberta Emergency Management Agency field officers and emergency social services officers are embedded with the local incident management team in Hinton and continue to provide a seamless connection point between emergency responders and the government of Alberta. The Alberta Emergency Management Team is working hard to make sure first responders have everything they need as they work to protect the Jasper town site and get the fire under control. This includes providing food, arranging lodging for hundreds of first responders and incident management teams on the ground, as well as arranging ground and air transport. We have also arranged numerous firefighting personnel to direct support the fire suppression effort on the ground. Over 100 organizations, agencies, and government departments have supported or contributed to the wildfire response in Jasper, and this is due in no small part to the Alberta Emergency Management Agency's coordination efforts. And we will continue to work hard to make sure that the full weight of the government of Alberta is behind Jasper and the incident management team. We know that being evacuated is incredibly challenging for everyone as well. There is a wide range of mental health supports which can be accessed through 211 Alberta, which is a 24/7 crisis line, a single point of contact for community supports and services near you. Albertans can call 211 to be referred to an appropriate service no matter where they are. When calling 211, evacuees can press 6 for immediate support. If they're in BC, they only need to tell the operator they're from Alberta. Emergency social services staff have also coordinated mental health and counseling supports to be available at reception centers across the province. I encourage people to donate to charity organizations in their area that are supporting evacuees or assisting with wildfire response, such as the Canadian Red Cross or others. For example, the Canadian Red Cross has begun distributing a one-time payment of $750 per household for people evacuated from their primary residence in Jasper, including temporary foreign workers. The Jasper Community Team Society is also taking donations. The weather this week continues to be hot and dry for many parts of Alberta, and it's important we all do our part to minimize the risk of new fire starts. Albertans should continue to follow all fire bans and restrictions as we heard from Christie. And as the weather warms up again, the fire risk across the province is very high to extreme. This includes Jasper National Park, where the fire is expected to become more dangerous again. So it's important to think about preparedness and what each individual needs to do to prepare for a possible evacuation. And as mentioned previously, we have a lot of useful information on alberta.ca/be prepared. That's alberta.ca/be prepared. Thank you. We encourage everyone to stay connected with their local authorities, website, and social media channels for up-to-date information. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. We'll now take some questions from media. Please ensure that you put your hand up and we'll call on you. One question, one follow-up, and please state your name and media outlet before you begin your question. Thank you. Let's start with Jonathan. Go ahead.
Hi, Jonathan Bradley, Western Standard. So my question is for Joe. So you spoke about the highway being reopened for commercial vehicle traffic and for certain vehicles that like personal vehicles that receive approval. What was the process like for determining that it would be reopened?
Yeah, when it comes to the planning of this, obviously there's multiple players that are involved, working closely with all the agencies at the table. Where we're dealing with a federal park, we're also dealing with Alberta Highways, and ensuring that we're protecting the safety and security of the town of Jasper, while all of this under the issue that we are still facing, which is a active live fire situation. And so they're carefully planning specific times where they can move traffic, and that, of course, is all tentative, as we know this fire is not under control and could turn, which they will be quickly addressing with their resources, and they've allowed times during that time frame to be able to do that. Of course, with that comes, as I mentioned, the security, where we have RCMP supporting the security around Jasper, and as well as the physical fencing that is going up right now to be able to fence off hazards as they remove some of the hazards that needs to be considered, but also ensuring that people don't stop along this highway as they go. And as we know, once you leave Hinton, the next stop for fuel is always away. So all of these are considerations that need to go into the planning, and working together with all agencies involved so that we could get this movement as quickly as possible.
Sorry, Jonathan, I'm just going to cut you off right now because we do have Minister Nixon, the Minister for Seniors, Community and Social Services, just joined the call. So I'm just going to open the mic to him for some remarks, and then I'll come back to you, Jonathan. Minister, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Minister.
Is the camera coming through?
No camera. Sorry, everyone, just bear with us. We seem to have lost Minister Nixon, so while we try to get him back on, Jonathan, I'll just let you proceed with your follow-up.
Okay. He's back now, sorry.
Oh, sorry, he's now back. Sorry, Jonathan. Minister Nixon, please go ahead.
Minister's still muted.
How about now? Can we hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Nixon. I'm the Minister of Community and Social Services and Seniors in the province of Alberta. Just talking to you from our command center in Hinton. I know you're doing your technical update. We wanted to give you a couple more details today about some significant changing environmental factors, particularly around evacuation that are taking place right now. So first off, I do want to update everybody on what's been going on with our seniors in particular. Some of you will know that we found ourselves in a situation where we had to evacuate our seniors lodge, our continuing care medical facilities, as well as our self-contained senior facilities. The vast majority of those individuals had to go over mountains into BC, lots of them into Valmont, and then elsewhere into BC. We've been up here today working with the teams to be able to make sure that we can get everybody back closer to home. And so tomorrow we'll be bringing in our anybody who is not with family that wants to return to the community. So there'll be, effective tomorrow, 18 continuing care patients that will be moving into this side of the line, into facilities with Alberta Health Services to be kept care of. We'll also be bringing 10 individuals back that are in our lodge system that will be staying in lodges in the Hinton area, where they'll be receiving the same service that they would have in the Jasper area. And then we'll be bringing in 15 individuals from our self-contained senior units that have been in hotels in Valmont. And that will mean that every one of our seniors who've had to leave the Jasper area are now back in Alberta in care or with family. There are about the other half continue to be with family, though we are created spaces to be able to make sure that they can return to the community. We are also right now working with the command center to be able to make sure that we can get everybody into town to be able to see their homes as soon as possible. This remains the highest priority for the Premier and Emergency Cabinet to be able to make sure everybody can return when it's safe to do so. But we think that we're close to where that could take place. And so you'll be seeing announcements shortly about both bus schedules and components to be able to get people access to the community to see what is taking place with their homes. So we want to update everybody that it's moving very fast out here, and it continues to be the highest priority of the government to get access to town for everybody so they can see what's taking place, so we can start the insurance process and begin rebuilding the town. And so this is some of the biggest movements that we've seen to be able to get towards that today. And then with that, I'm happy. I don't know if we can take any questions, but that's our update on what's happening out here right now.
Thanks, Minister. We'll get back to questions right now. So Jonathan, please go ahead.
Yes. So can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So my follow-up would go to Joe. So you spoke about the reception centers having mental health services available, and you've been emphasizing so many, to people to access them. What is the status of the mental health services within the reception centers? Are they being utilized by multiple people? What type of issues are people bringing up at them? Things like that.
Yeah, I think that level of detail, of course, what's personally going on between those that are supporting and the individual concerns that people are having, I would not self, but I can tell you what we're hearing from our teams is around, when can we get to see what's happening in our town, and a lot of concern on what the next steps look like. And making sure that I think there's a confidence out there, and we are definitely doing what we can to make sure that they are confident that everything is being done to look after their best well-being. And we're working as quickly as we can to get this process continued and moving forward, so that they can continue on with the next steps as we go. So. That's an overall general piece that I can share.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe. Michelle, over to you. Michelle, over to you. Michelle, go ahead.
Sheena, I think Michelle is having issues with her microphone, as we have unmuted her.
All right, let's move over to Tamir, and then Michelle, we can come back to you if it starts working for you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
This is Timur Durrani from the Globe and Mail. I guess this is a question that Joe, Christie, and Minister Nixon, and both of my questions are probably that all three of you could perhaps answer. How would you compare, I know it's still really early days, but how would you compare this wildfire season so far for Alberta to previous years? Can you give us a description, as vividly as possible in terms of the efforts, the resources, and personnel required for 2024 so far?
I can
start. Want to take that first?
Okay. Oh, no, please go ahead, Minister.
Well, I'll go first, and then somebody can give a little bit more technical details as far as numbers. Certainly, in some ways, there's been less of an impact just for sheer scale of fires, though we're not done yet. I mean, last year we were dealing with some pretty extraordinary circumstances. It all came at once early in the spring. Lots more evacuations taking place, including evacuating an entire province or a territory to the north of us. And so we were seeing more widespread pressure. That said, we did not lose a town last year in the same type of context, which obviously adds a tremendous amount of other things that have to be dealt with while we're dealing with that. And of course, we're dealing with the unique situation now of the overlap where this major fire is taking place in federal territory and national park area. And so that significant component where this is ultimately federal government responsibility on the park. And so there's a lot more coordination that takes place like that. So I think those situations made it a little bit worse. But in general, the sheer volume was harder to manage from a government perspective last year.
And from a technical perspective on the wildfire, last year was truly a record-breaking season for us here in Alberta. We had 2.2 million hectares burned by this time, and we are really just around 560,000 hectares at the moment. So significantly less area burned than we had last year. We have about the same number of wildfires, and we're about average for area burned. So I think one of the unusual things about this wildfire season for us in Alberta is really the late activity that we've had. Traditionally, we have the most wildfire activity, particularly those that are in the vicinity of communities, in the months of May, maybe late April into early June. That's generally the time where we see the highest wildfire danger, because that's when the snow has melted. We have a lot of dry, dead grass and fuels, and the leaves haven't turned green yet. So that's traditionally where we get more extreme wildfire activity. So we did have some activity at that point in the year around the Fort McMurray area, but it is unusual for us to see so much activity in July. As I did point out yesterday, 94% of the area burned has so far been burnt in the month of July, and that's largely because of the large lightning fires that we've had this month. So we have had a significantly unusual July here in Alberta.
Thanks, Christie. Did you have a follow-up?
I did, yeah. I guess the reason why I asked this also is because, and this is part of my follow-up for perhaps all three, again, is can you tell us about how this year prepares you for future years? Because, you know, in some ways, what you're experiencing right now can help with the prep work for the coming years and the way that you think about them and the efforts that you put there. You just talked to Christie about how, you know, the season started a bit later than it would have normally. Can you explain to us how you're thinking for future years and for future years of wildfires based on the activity and behaviors that you've observed this year and the effort that you put in there?
We're learning every year. As we look back on the wildfire season, we're having a look at patterns, at trends, at what we've seen and how we can prepare better in the future. And so certainly that is something we have made changes for this year after last year's season. We did quite a number of things, including hiring more Albertan firefighters, preparing earlier in the season, ensuring we had more people hired, trained, and ready with our equipment earlier in the year as well. So we have already been taking steps to learn from last year. No doubt that will be happening again this year, just looking at the areas where we've seen more activity, looking at those trends with the environment and the conditions and the climate that we're viewing. It is something and an ongoing learning process for us here, and we're always using both the experience that we've had from previous seasons and previous decades, as well as looking to new technology and what we can learn and adapt for the future.
Yeah, and I would echo Christie's comments around this, like a continuous improvement model where we're looking at what happened in the 2023 season. And I know our field officers, they went out and reviewed 100% of municipal emergency management plans for each of the communities. And when we're doing that, we're also encouraging and working with communities on improving their hazard identifications and their risk assessments, helping them gauge potential impacts and the variety of emergency situations that they may have. And of course, exercising the plans that each community has as part of this education and system to handle emergencies in the province. And so I know as well, we incorporate what we learn into our training and support the training of municipalities and that continuous improvement mindset and our partners that support us as well. So those learnings all every year and every incident, actually, you see learnings and you incorporate them into how you move forward.
Thanks, Joe. Let's try Michelle again. Over to you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much for coming back to me. I have a question for Minister Nixon. I hope he's still there. Um, I wanted to, Minister.
I'm
Oh,
still here.
hello. Oh,
Yeah.
excellent. Minister, I wonder if you could tell me a little bit more about the plan to take residents to Jasper to view their properties. And I know you said it's very dependent on the fire conditions. What would be the conditions? Will people be allowed to get out and look around? Or, I mean, what are you guys thinking here?
So I think that the challenge would be is if we wait for the conditions to be perfect enough to be able to let everybody get out, that's going to take too long for these families that are away from home. And so, the objective, I think, of emergency cabinet right now is to get individuals in to physically be able to see for sure what is taking place with their homes. If we're at the point where it's safe enough, obviously, to be able to go even further than that, so be it. But the perspective of the government is we shouldn't be waiting for that. We need to make it safe enough that we can get people in on a bus, bring them actually into the community so they can physically see what has happened with their home. So even while we are still dealing with all those other issues that have to be dealt with to make the town safe long term to rebuild it, that they can then start to have the conversations with their insurance company. They can start to grieve. They can start to work with our mental health help that we have in place, and to be able to move the process forward. And so, while we got to do it safe, we understand that it is certainly the position of the Alberta government. We need to do that soon. And when I say soon, I mean within the next few days, if possible, to get people back in the community. Because the one thing that we have learned from Slave Lake, Fort McMurray, the faster we can start that process, start that work with insurance, start getting people in to physically be able to see what is taking place in their community, the faster we can be able to rebuild the community.
And as a follow-up, just in terms of the jurisdictional part of it, why is it the Alberta government's responsibility to do that? I'm just curious.
So ultimately, the situation that's taking place with the national park is the national park's responsibility, the federal government. But we have almost 10,000 Albertans who are not at home right now, and the people in Jasper are Albertans, and we want to do everything we can to support the federal government, the National Park Service, and most importantly, those Albertans to be able to get moving forward. And the other thing is Jasper is a critical part of our province, not only obviously for Jasperites who call it home, but it is a major part of the tourist infrastructure that makes Alberta work. We have an interest as Albertans to be able to make sure that mountain town is back up and doing its significant role in our province. And so, it's not for us, it's not so much about jurisdiction, it's about trying to help Albertans and being able to use the assets and the experience that we have as the Alberta government to be able to help Jasper and the National Park Service get through this significant crisis.
Great. Thank you, Minister.
And Sheena, if I can add to support that, all of this work works closely with all the parties involved. And so what's extremely important is making sure that the town of Jasper, they have a key connection into their residents as well. And so we're all working together as one to ensure, and that plan is underway and being developed. And as Minister said, it's about getting Albertans back into their homes at the end of the day.
Great. Thank you, Joe. It looks like that's all the questions we have for today. So just a reminder that the daily media update will come out after 3:30 p.m. today. Thanks, everyone.